Hi, it's Warren Black, and here's our condensed version of the Great Reset webinar just done a couple of days ago. So, this is not a financial advice webinar or anything about your personal objectives or circumstances. We're not licensed to do anything like that. This is just purely financial, tax, asset protection, education. So this is a shortened version of the longer one that we've done, which if you enjoy this version, you can always go into our YouTube channel at Global Wealth Club and watch our 2-hour version of this webinar. So lack of knowledge and ignorance is what causes people to perish and what's caused most people right now to be going through financial challenges and certainly not knowing what's ahead with this great reset. And failure to know this could leave you not only vulnerable, but could pretty much end your livelihood financially. So the Great Reset from the World Economic Forum, when you understand that, and not just from the World Economic Forum, but what's actually happening in history and how pretty much every 90 years on average there's a financial reset in an economy like ours. So the wealthy are taking steps. So we went through all of this and explained what you were going to learn. I explained my background and explained how this happens and how if you didn't work for it, you could actually, or not ready for it rather, you could not only lose everything you've worked for, but pretty much lose your rights and freedoms as we're seeing now. So this has been mentioned by many over the last 20 years, more recent times, Robert Kiyosaki in his book Second Chance and Porter Stainsbury. So the US election debacle really does show the whole issue that's going on in the world right now and what an absolute mess the world is, and not just with the whole virus situation, but the whole economic situation and how we're heading very fast for a meltdown as governments is pretty much printing money out of nothing. And that's why the rich are fleeing. They've got a plan B they've always set up in the event of the worst case scenario. They know that basically true sovereignty means you've got the right and power to govern yourself with no interference from outside sources or bodies. That means you're the captain of your own financial ship, not the government, not your accountant, not your lawyer, not your financial advisor, not anyone else, you. And if you don't have sovereignty in these days, you will not survive it. And it will be dark, dark days. Because right now, this is the age where you either become sovereign or you become a slave. There's no longer any in between. Rome was eventually invaded. And what happened in a sovereign individual explains the transition to the information age and how the Roman Empire completely collapsed because it became greedy, became complacent. And what they did was they mapped out the Western world and showed pretty much precisely how much the Western world is heading for devastation, for damage, and for basically the same path. Like literally it's eerie. So even what's happening now with lockdowns in the country, they are predicting eventually there'll be lockdown of capital controls, being able to move money out. They predicted the rise of cryptocurrencies, and they predict the ultimate collapse of massive, large nation states or governments to be replaced by small sovereign communities. But they said in the process of getting there, it would be absolutely quite challenging, quite difficult, and they said there would be governments virtually turning into cartels. And certainly we're seeing all that happen. But they talked about the rise of the internet and how people's ability to become sovereign would be put through the roof. So Rome was eventually invaded, and we're seeing signs of that now with the US starting to show signs of collapse and breakdown in many of the West. And the truth is, we just don't learn from history with, like it seems, with communism. Like right now, there's some crazy, crazy percentages of people who are calling out for basically socialism and for government handouts. The exact thing which, by the way, collapsed almost every economy from Venezuela to anywhere else when it's been done. So really, socialism is a form of communism. And the fact is, when one person receives without working for, another person must work for without receiving. In other words, you can't just make money out of nothing, so to speak. What seems to be a government printout money out of nothing is actually diluting or taking money from someone else. So the US is just printing money left, right, and center, but effectively taking it from the wealthy. And now, of course, Joe Biden is talking about wealth taxes and putting them up significantly. So effectively, the wealthy could end up paying as much as 73%. Eventually, this is what happens. People will just start fleeing. And this is what the wealthy are doing. They're jumping on yachts and things like that. So this is what we talked about here, socialism, Biden's wealth tax, what they're going on about, and the COVID lockdowns and how governments is printing money. And I'm finding the more educated people are, the more afraid they are, and with damn good reason. There's good reason to be nervous right now, what's going on in the financial world. And when you understand the Great Reset, which we went through at the webinar, pretty much it's saying the end of capitalism as we know it, or the opportunity to become wealthy through basically your own creative ideas, and a move towards socialism and oligopolies. So basically what that means is that the World Economic Forum would like to reset, and what it says is you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy, and it'll be 2030. So pretty much what they're saying is that the world will be the elite, or governments, there'll be oligopoly, which means some kind of Russian, or not Russian, but in Russia, for example, they have oligarchs, which are billionaires who work with the government to basically run the country. And that's effectively what's happening now, the big tech or the super wealthy to work with governments to run the country. So what it means in plain English is this, and I went to explain all of these things, and you can openly read about it at the Great Reset Forum. So more than ever, it's more important to be sovereign. That's why the rich, for example, in the time of the Trump election and Biden were racing out on boats into the ocean. And right now, even in Australia, we're seeing signs like that in other parts of the world. So if you're not taking steps to minimise your taxes and protect your wealth and keep governments far from it, you and your family's future's in great jeopardy because governments are coming for your money, and that's the reality. So it's critical to take the steps now and get educated, protect your wealth before it's too late. So we went through and showed the incredible differences in what happens in your tax plan. And you can see eventually, like when you're paying large amounts of taxes or compared to very small, how much money you will have. It's quite profound. So we went through what lies ahead, and we're seeing more contact tracing, more push towards jabs. This is not yet happening on a big scale, but there's already alluding to nanochips and microchipping and messenger RNAs and things like that. So soaring of currency, stocks and commodities, we're in the middle of a big melt-up right now, and every economic analyst I just about know who has been predicting the melt-up or financial markets soaring in cryptos and have been spot on. So the meltdown or economic crash will be like with nothing that has been seen pretty much in the Western world, and it will make the Great Depression like a picnic. So we're heading for a major economic meltdown. So not the time to be in denial or bury your head in the sand. So what's the solution? Very simply, safety first. So nobody wants to be the wealthiest man or woman in the prison. So, which is what we're seeing in the world right now, where your life and safety is literally at risk of being arrested or fined or something of that nature. When civilizations embrace socialism, eventually it runs out of money, and because the rich leave and the government got no more money to print. So what happens is people panic and they riot. The Bank Bail-in Act, of course, is talking about rescuing the banks in the event of a collapse. And rest assured they're going to certainly use it, as they showed with the Biosecurity Act. So things like food shortages, toilet paper fiasco that we saw, all this stuff starts happening. Even bank runs. In the Great Depression and almost every crash, Argentina, Venezuela, you see people running to the bank and the bank's being forced to close because they've got to have enough cash, and everyone's savings. It's basically a big Ponzi scheme, which means that they're pretty much printing money that doesn't actually exist in the bank. So bank runs happened in 2007, but you're going to be seeing plenty of these things happen. So how do you protect your wealth? What lies ahead? Harry Browne Model Portfolio. This is something that Stephen Pettit and myself have been teaching in our high-level global wealth club. This is what the elite and the super wealthy do. It's not so much about putting your money like the general masses, or even most people I find like to go, yep, I like property, or I like stocks, or I like cryptos. Well, the wealthy make sure they've got their hand a bit in everything. Because if cryptos don't work out, gold might work out. If cryptos and gold don't work out, stocks could do really well. If stocks don't work out in bonds, cryptos and gold might do well. If none of them work well, their private investments might work well. So they're really hedging their bets. So the 6 flags to be a sovereign individual, which I've written here. according to Stephen Pettit, who's one of the main speakers at the Global Wealth Club and mentored me a bit in this, is that the sovereign individual has firstly a cash flow which is not dependent on a job. And the fact is, being sovereign is what will save your life. Many people I know have come to me saying, Warren, I can't act, how do I handle my employer? They're wanting me to wear a mask, or they're wanting me to do this, or they're wanting me to do that. And the point is, regardless of your views on these things, the fact is when you've got a job and you don't have a sovereign cash flow, you're vulnerable. You could have someone just turn up and say, you've got to basically go and, have a carrot put up your butt or something like that. Now, again, I'm being a bit facetious, but you get my drift. The point is you don't have sovereignty when you're in a job and have someone else telling you what to do. So sovereignty means you have a cash flow which you've created through a business or some kind of income streams. You've got investment where you're storing your wealth. So you've got like an asset base, like real wealth, gold, silver, property, whatever else it is that you do. Having a really good privacy strategy to make sure that your hard-earned wealth is protected and not easily grabbed. This, of course, is very important. Leaving a legacy beyond your lifetime. I'm really, really big on that one. And having a clear mission, because ultimately you can't take your money with you, and the wealthy know this. A truly sovereign individual quickly realizes that life is more than just simply having money. So the other things is a tax residency and citizenship. So what kind of things do the wealthy do? I discussed precious metals. All of this I discussed in the webinar. Buying farmland, gems and jewelry, because they can easily be transported and carried around and generally don't tend to be confiscated, whereas gold can be. Art is very popular. Wine can be very high returns. How do you elect structure? Peter Martin, the Sydney Morning Herald journalist, found that of the 56 richest in Australia, only 2 pay tax, but he spent over $1 million on average on their tax advisors. So that shows that op tax is by and large optional. So the secret is the right team and structures for business success. So just controlling, not owning, the Branson, the Clintons, the Rockefellers, with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Warren Buffett's foundation, the Clinton Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. All of these have been used for their various business structures and tax minimization and wealth protection. So tax residency, local companies, like setting up a company, setting up trusts is what the rich do. The main thing is anything other than being in their name. And also in the most tax effective jurisdiction. Offshore companies, Google have got plenty of these, or most wealthy people do. Cook Islands Trust, great for asset protection. Foundations, great for public interest and tax planning and wealth protection and passing it on. Second passport, a plan B. This means that if your country really goes feral, you're protected. So these are some of the places you can go, and we discussed this in the webinar. So this is, like I said, just a condensed version of the webinar. So these are just all examples. Hong Kong is great for banking. I use it myself. Singapore I've used as well. Seychelles, I've got my own company there. You can also have foundations there. So by and large, tax structuring is very effective. And asset protection, keeping your wealth is important as making it. So finally, I explored my asset protection principles on controlling, not owning, and being a penniless bum, owning nothing in your own name, making sure you got something in a sovereign jurisdiction. Otherwise, for example, let's just say Australian government decided to seize your gold. If you got some gold in Singapore, you'll be a lot happier and glad that you did that. Knowing how the game works, reviewing and making sure you got the right team. So a good time to take charge of your money and secure your future. But there's more opportunity than you ever could imagine possible. So, summary, worst case scenario, take a brutal look at it on where you're at, what are the flaws, really go through and thoroughly map out where you're at, get some specialist advice of an expert to keep yourself and your family safe without relying on anyone, and get educated. That's what the wealthy do. They stay ahead of the game, they keep up to date. They don't just kind of sit and leave, but every week, every month, every day even, they're growing and learning something. So becoming part of a community or group who's special in the area and can guide you can also be really good. So any questions, just email them through. So in terms of what we went through in the webinar, and like I said, what's it too hard to get more? Your three choices are just hope it all works out and live in fear. Blindly just follow the masses. See your current accountant. Most of you are here because your current accountant's not really, floating your boat or cutting the mustard. But if you decide your current accountant is good, then see them. That's great. You don't need to see us. The other one is take action and get specialist help on protecting yourself from the Great Reset, coming safely through the other side. So what we did was show what's to do next, a no obligation call. So what you do is click on this link, and you'll see it for yourself. I'll just quickly pull it up for you here. If you go here onto the Global Wealth Club site, you will see something on the right, and you just go there, click there, and you just choose whatever it is that you would like. And once you do that, it's nice and easy. So within that, our specialist will go through with you. Generally, you've got a couple of choices. You've got a private advice package to go through with us, which will quote you depending on your needs. That's one option. Option two is far more than private advice. It also is including not only private advice, but more advanced advice. And on top of that, mentoring, education, weekly webinars, ongoing training, and really helping you to actually become sovereign and the captain of your own financial ship by mastering wealth protection, minimizing taxes, finding the best investment opportunities, and even having opportunity to be involved in investment syndicates. If you've got any questions, please just complete the application, go to the site at the Global Wealth Club, and just send them all through. Okay, thanks very much. And if you'd like to see more information, watch the whole 2-hour presentation of this where I'll go obviously into much more detail on the matters raised.